Hey friends, so here's another episode with lessons from a recent trip I took. And this time I included some things that I learned relevant to backpacking and saved the sermon part for the end. So while it's true that when I'm out hiking, I do get an opportunity to learn a little bit more about my relationship with God and how to live in a way that really reflects Him, I also get an opportunity to become a more critical thinker and resourceful hiker. So that's something that I really love about just the backpacking experience in general. And when all you have is the stuff on your back and the things around you, you really do have to get creative and learn to multi-use things. And when you're in the backcountry, there's no Amazon solution that you can just order whenever obstacles arise. And if you can't come up with a solution just then, you just gotta tough it out and build some character out of the whole situation and then try to put something together to put into practice for the next time that you go out on a trip to do it better next time. But so without further ado, here's a little bit of what I learned on my 3-day trip on the Palmetto and Foothills trails.
I'm up in the mountains again. I'm getting lighter, the air's getting thin. Now I'm facing down with a grin. I've been in the city too long, sidewalks and buildings and singing sad songs. Now I'm back up where I belong, in the mountains again.
Hey friends, I decided to take a spur-of-the-moment backpacking trip up here in the Table Rock area. I did a loop, so taking two parts of the Palmetto Trail and linking it to the Foothills Trail. So I started at Table Rock, looped my way back around, and this is the third day, so it was 2 nights and 3 days. And before I finish up this hike, I wanted to share some things that I learned from this experience. I originally wanted to do this at the Bald Knob overlook, but I kind of left camp a little bit late and I figured there'd already be some early hikers there and I didn't want to take away from their experience with all my yammering. But this outlook or overlook area is absolutely gorgeous and in my opinion has better views than Bald Knob. But so this trip was full of firsts. So my first time seeing a black bear in person, my first time camping with somebody I didn't know, my first time ever camping on the Foothills Trail, which I've just been dying to hike that whole trail. It's like 76 miles and do like a week-long hike out here, but one thing after another just kept preventing me. So one day I'll do it, hopefully soon. But I wanted to share some of the things I learned, like gear hacks and uses for gear other than their intended purpose. Before I get into all that, just want to apologize for the tired eyes and matted mane, looking kind of disheveled, but it's day 3, what do you expect? If I do ramble a bit, sorry about that. I usually have a way to jot down some notes. Here I'm just going off the top of my head. But so some things that I learned on this trip was not to believe the weatherman, plain and simple. So my first night camping, I read the weather report from the last signal I was able to get, and it said that it was just going to be clouds and no rain. That was so not the case. It was a pretty intense storm with like lightning and everything, and I assumed that it was going to be just fine, that it was not going to rain, and I woke up at 3 in the morning to the sound of very heavy rain, and I realized, oh my gosh, my clothes and my shoes are hanging out by the tree on the other side of the fire ring. And so I threw my rain jacket on and I ran out there across my campsite and tried to gather up my clothes and my shoes, but they were already soaked. And so that next morning, my shoes were soaked, my clothes were soaked, which how hot it gets in the morning out here in July wasn't so bad. It was kind of cooling, but still putting wet shoes on first thing in the morning and kind of squishing around in those wasn't the funnest thing. So the second night, even though it didn't look like it was gonna rain, I made sure to put everything underneath the vestibule of my tent. I was not chancing it. After they finally dried out, I was not about to do that again. Another thing that I learned was some multi-uses for my gear. So my sunglasses, not only do they shield my eyes from the sun, they worked really good as mosquito repelling goggles. So I had those on and the bugs would fly into them and not get into my eyes, which was pretty awesome. Another thing that I found a multi-use for is one of the inflatable pillows. And so the one that I have has already, reached the end of its lifespan. It was just a $2 inflatable one from Walmart, and it's not the kind that you can deflate and reinflate again. It's like a one and done. But so I strapped it to the outside of my pack, and it served a pretty good purpose other than just somewhere to sit the next 2 nights. So I was able to use it to put behind my knees when I slept on my back to kind of take the pressure off of my legs and my back, kind of like elevate my feet. And also when I wanted to sleep on my side, I was able to put it between my knees to kind of like give me more support. And a third thing that I learned another use for was my rain suit. So I was expecting to have a little bit of rain out here, which thankfully it just hit during that first night, but always be prepared. And it got a little bit chilly that night. I was thinking, like, it's July. It is not going to be chilly at night. I'm gonna be fine. I skipped the sleeping bag and just took a sleeping bag liner and then my pad, which is a Nemo tensor and has the insulation. So I was like, I'll be fine without a full sleeping bag. And the first night I got kind of chilly. Obviously the rain contributed to that temperature drop, but I wasn't cold, but it wasn't comfortable. And I thought about, my rain suit, how if you try and like hike in one of those during the day, it can get really toasty and pretty warm and sweaty. So I was like, I've got it. I'm gonna put my rain suit on and then climb back into my little sleeping bag liner. And it actually warmed me up pretty well. And so the second night, when I woke up kind of chilly, I put the pants and the jacket on and was able to sleep through the rest of the night. So that's an idea if you're trying to keep things light and multi-use your gear, but you don't want to use the full sleeping bag, because it wound up not getting into a lower temperature until like the early hours of the morning, like 1, 2, and 3. So it really didn't make sense for me to be really hot and toasty, at like 10, 11, 12 before I needed it. So I just kind of like had it right there for when it would be useful. Oh, another tip I wanted to share was baking soda. So baking soda serves a multitude of purposes. It's much more natural than taking any kind of like soap out, and it's not magic. It won't totally get rid of the stink, but it does help with like 3-day clothes to kind of sprinkle some of that on your clothes, turn them inside out, sprinkle some of that on it and kind of rub it into the fabric. And it helps a little bit, not a whole lot, but a little bit. And it's also great for washing your face if you want to skip toothpaste and go with that. It's a good option. Also for doing like your laundry, if you've got something like a bandana, you want to clean that out, you can just kind of scoop some water into your cook pot away from a water source and, kind of wash your stuff out with that if like you have no other option and you just really gotta wash your stuff out. And the last thing I wanted to share, which was kind of the biggest one that I learned, is don't rely on just one map. I had to use like 4 different maps for this, and I was using Avenza, which is a really fantastic app. If you haven't gotten it, you really should. Because I was taking 3 different trail sections, not all of them show the full area. And so 2 of the maps I downloaded were for the Palmetto Trail, those 2 sections I'd be hiking, and some of those parts of it overlapped to show where the next part went, but it cut off at a certain point. And I missed a turn, and because the Palmetto Trail links up with a lot of old logging roads and also dirt roads that go to people's property, I wound up missing a turn at the 5-mile mark on one of those passages of the Palmetto Trail, and I came out of the woods in some guy's yard. Like, there was a shirtless man whittling something sitting on a stump, and his truck was like tireless up on cinder blocks. It was kind of funny, and he just kind of looked at me funny, and I realized this is not the trail. So I turned around, went back, and when I checked my map, I wasn't even on the map. Like, it showed me in the key. So at that point, I remembered that I had downloaded a larger map of the whole blue wall section, and that's by Pisgah Map Company. They sell a paper version. You can also download the version on Avenza for like $5, which is what I did. And that showed me that I was on one of those like dirt roads that had connected to it and helped me to get back on the correct trail. And so that was extremely helpful, having multiple maps. And when I switched over from the Palmetto Trail onto the Foothills Trail, having that blue wall map was very helpful because I could see a large scale view of the area. I could see, you know, how much further I had to go on the Foothills Trail to take me into Table Rock. So relying on just one map, even just one paper map, may not be the best idea. You need to have like multiple ways to see where you are, because if you end up like I was off the map, especially using technology, that can be pretty intimidating, and you can think, oh my gosh, I'm lost. And I really wasn't that far off. I just had to double back like a half mile or so to get back to where I needed to be. But if it wasn't for that backup map, I probably would have wandered around in circles and maybe panicked a little bit because I wouldn't know where I was supposed to go. The last thing I wanted to share is a bit of a spiritual lesson that I learned out here. So when I am hiking and backpacking, most of the time I'm praying, and it just looks like a woman who is totally out of her mind talking to herself, but that's okay. And one of the things that I was praying about was just thanking God for the people in my life. So I've got fantastic friends and family who I really think I take for granted a lot. Like the friend that let me stay with her on Thursday when I decided to take this spur of the moment trip, she didn't have to do that. That was so just gracious and hospitable of her. And a lot of my friends and family are like that. They're just these generous, giving people. And most of the time, I find myself in a situation where I'm like so moved by their generosity and their kindness, but then when God gives me the opportunity to extend the same kindness and generosity, I kind of miss the mark. And I always feel like the ungrateful servant, if you've ever read that parable. And while I don't get turned over to jailers to be tortured after I miss the mark, I feel pretty bad, you know, like emotionally and spiritually, like, you know, God has extended some really great kindness to me, either directly from Him or through other people. And then when I'm given the opportunity to give it back or extend it back to someone else, I kind of mess up, and I get like, it feels pretty bad. Like, man, I totally missed that opportunity. So something that I was praying for on the first day of this trip was, you know, God, give me the opportunity and let me see the opportunity to extend that kindness, that generosity and hospitality to other people that you so freely give to me through others and directly from you. And it was kind of funny. On my second night camping, I planned to stay at the Lighthouse campsite on the Foothills Trail. And it was really late in the day. I was starting to feel it in like my knees and my hips and ankles, and I really needed to set up camp and stop for the day. And I was getting really close but hadn't reached the site yet, and I passed an elderly gentleman who was just a day hiker and really didn't know much about the trail, and I asked him if he had seen that campsite up ahead, and he said, oh yeah, but you know, there's there's 3 guys there already. They've got 3 tents, and they've actually got some really aggressive dogs. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, do you know if there's any other campsites before it? And he really didn't know. And so that felt super uncertain to me. And I kind of made up my mind. I was like, okay, worst case scenario, I asked these people, can I please just set my camp up right in the corner? I'll be out of your way. And so I was praying like the whole time approaching that campsite that he would provide somewhere for me to stay. And when I reached the stream crossing, there were 3 guys and 2 dogs all packed up crossing the stream. And I asked them, hey, did you guys just come from the lighthouse camp? And they said, yeah, it's totally open. We just got done using it. And their dogs were actually very sweet. Like one of them came up to me and sniffed my hand and let me pet him. So I don't know. But that was just such a blessing. And I got to the camp and it was the coolest campsite I've seen yet. Well, actually, the Cantrell home site is pretty cool on the Foothills Trail, but this one was pretty awesome also. But so I set up camp, I took a nap, and then a couple hours later, I went out to go get water from the stream, and a hiker was coming from the direction I was coming from. I could tell this dude was tired. It was like 5 o'clock, and he asked me, are there any campsites up there? I said, yeah, actually, I'm staying at the lighthouse campsite, and you're more than welcome to stay there with me if you really want to. And that was like opportunity seized. I was able to extend the same kindness and generosity that God gave to me by letting me have a place to stay. I could have been like, oh yeah, there's one site, but I'm already there. But instead, God gave me that opportunity to say, oh no, come stay with me. Because just a few hours ago, I was feeling pretty anxious and tired and needed a place to stop. And who was I to turn around and say, no, you can't camp here, like keep walking, buddy, especially if there was no other place up ahead, because I didn't know for sure. And that was just really cool, and I wound up meeting a really nice person and getting to chat with them, and that was a fantastic opportunity. I'm glad that I didn't mess that up and miss out on a chance to learn a lesson that I've asked God specifically to teach me. And so I look forward to the opportunities that he gives me going forward to extend kindness and generosity and the things that he gives to me. Because when we think about it, the stuff that we own, like our home, our jobs, even something like a campsite, like that doesn't belong to us, that's God's, and he provides it to us so that we can bless others with it. And being super stingy with those things does not show gratitude for what we have been given. So those are just some things that I wanted to share with you from this hike, and I will be sharing a lot of the neat little tricks and gear hacks and things I've been testing out. I've been testing out barefoot shoes and a few different gear hacks from the Dollar Tree, so I hope to share those in future videos with you. If you made it all the way to the end of this, thanks so much for sticking around, and I hope I see you again next time.
Let me live my life in the air. Let my friends in the forest give me shelter up there. And I live my life without cares in the mountains again. In the mountains again.